The numbers that we work with are not always positive numbers. We started with the natural or counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Next we added 0 to the natural numbers and got the whole numbers. We have another group of numbers that we can add to the whole numbers. These numbers are different as they're all negative numbers. The numbers we add are the opposite of the natural or counting numbers. The opposite of 1 is negative 1. The opposite of 2 is negative 2. The opposite of 3 is negative 3, and so on. The new set of numbers that we have is called the integers. It is made up of the natural numbers, 0, and the opposites of the natural numbers. We're going to set up our trays in a different way to visualize the set of integers. This time we'll take balls of one color and set them up in the bottom right of the tray. Look at how I'm setting up my tray, and you set up your tray the same way. Your teacher will pause the movie and restart it when your trays are set up. The top of these balls will represent our 0 line. I'm going to place a line there to help you remember where 0 is. The first thing we need to understand is how we're going to represent both positive and negative integers. Every ball of a different color that is above the 0 line will represent a positive 1. Follow along on your trays as I represent positive values. Positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, positive 4. As long as the balls are above the 0 line, they represent positive numbers. Each ball represents positive 1. Let's look at another way we could have placed the balls. Positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, positive 4. Reset your trays. Now let's look at how we will represent negative numbers. Every empty space below the 0 line will represent a negative 1. Follow along on your trays as I represent negative values. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Just as the balls above the 0 line represent positive numbers no matter where they were, each empty space below the 0 line represents a negative 1. Let's look at another way we could have placed the spaces. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Let's represent some positive and negative values using our balls and trays. Reset your trays and follow along with me as I do the first ones. Jack climbed a hill that was 4 feet tall. Since the number of feet we were climbing was up, we could use a positive 4 to represent it. Positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, positive 4. Reset your trays and work another one along with me. Matt's dog dug a hole 3 feet deep. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Now I'm going to give you some situations and you represent them using positives and negatives. Mary owed her father $2. Here's how I represented it. Since Mary owed her father money, this meant she had a negative amount of money, and I represented it by a negative 2. Negative 1, negative 2. Let's try another one. Gerald rode the elevator down 5 floors. Here's how I represented it. Since the elevator went down, I represented it as a negative 5. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. Here's another one. Jose built a sandcastle 5 feet tall. Here's how I represented it. Since the sandcastle is going up, I represented the height as a positive 5. Positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, positive 4, positive 5. Remember, it's the number of balls that represent the 5 feet tall. They do not have to be in a straight line up. Let's try one more. Tanisha walked 3 feet backward and then started to walk forward. Here's how I represented it. Since Tanisha was going backward, I represented the distance as a -3. -1, -2, -3.